You might think the next big fintech opportunity is in Silicon Valley, or maybe even in Europe. But what if I told you it's happening in Australia? Yeah, that's right. While most eyes are locked on the usual suspects, a billion-dollar fintech boom is quietly taking over down under. And guess what? Most Americans aren't even paying attention. Let me hit you with a number. $23.7 billion. That's what the Australian fintech market is projected to hit by 2030. That's nearly double its current size, growing at a pace of 15% per year. That's not just growth, that's acceleration. And if you're watching this from the US, this might be your wake-up call. Let's talk about why this matters to you. First off, the Australian market isn't just growing, it's evolving. It's becoming a breeding ground for fintech unicorns, global disruptors, and investment opportunities that could make early backers a fortune. Ever heard of Airwallex? If you haven't, you will. Valued at over $6 billion, this Melbourne-born company is changing the game in cross-border payments. They're already operating in 180 countries, including a strong presence in the US, and they just raised another $300 million in funding. Yeah, this is the kind of player we usually associate with Silicon Valley, but it's Aussie-born, and that tells you something very powerful. Innovation isn't geographically locked anymore. Talent, vision, and execution are global. Airwallex proves that the fintech future can come from anywhere, and right now, it's coming from Australia. Then there's Zipco. Buy now, pay later. Sound familiar? While the US talks about Klarna and Affirm, Australians have been building their own version, and it's booming. Zip already serves over 6 million customers and moved more than 10 billion Australian dollars in transaction volume last year alone. And yes, they're in the US market too. They understand consumer psychology, financial accessibility, and the growing demand for installment payment options. Zipco doesn't just follow trends, they help define them. That's the kind of company that could reshape how Americans experience credit. Oh, and let's not forget Swyftx, the crypto platform targeting high-net-worth individuals in the US. They're not just buying Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're offering personalized crypto services tailored for American millionaires. If that doesn't scream global ambition, I don't know what does. These services are built to feel more like boutique wealth management than a generic exchange. The takeaway? Australian fintechs understand niche segmentation and build specifically for value-rich audiences. So why is all of this happening in Australia? For starters, the government has been incredibly forward-thinking when it comes to regulation. They implemented something called the Consumer Data Right, basically giving Aussies full control over their financial data. That opens the floodgates for open banking, competitive fintech products, and lightning-fast innovation. When consumers own their data, they gain leverage. And when they gain leverage, companies have to compete through quality, not just monopoly. That's a huge shift. Imagine a US market where banks were forced to build truly customer-first services. That's what's happening in Australia. And let's be honest, Aussies are digitally savvy. This is a country where mobile payment adoption is sky-high and consumers expect top-tier digital experiences. That cultural alignment with tech makes it the perfect environment for fintech growth. You won't find resistance to change here. You'll find consumers pushing brands to do better, faster, smarter. That kind of pressure creates diamonds, and in this case, billion-dollar fintechs. But here's the kicker. US investors are already starting to catch on. Funds like Airtree Ventures are pulling in capital from Harvard, MetLife, and other major US institutions. These aren't small-time bets. This is real money backing real potential. Airtree isn't a household name in the States yet, but they've backed some of the most explosive companies in the Southern Hemisphere. Companies like Canva, which reshaped design for everyone, everywhere. What happens when that kind of investment focus points directly at fintech? Now you're probably wondering, what's in it for me? If you're an investor, this is your chance to get in early on the next wave of fintech disruption. This isn't some meme stock FOMO play. This is real infrastructure being built, real customer adoption, and real growth. Whether you're an angel investor or part of a larger fund, this is the time to look globally. If you're a founder, think partnerships, think expansion. Think about tapping into a market that's not oversaturated but incredibly hungry for innovation. Australia offers you a sandbox that mirrors American tech culture but with fewer barriers to entry. It's a space to test, to iterate, and to thrive. Your next collaboration could be with a startup in Sydney, not San Francisco. And if you're just a fintech enthusiast, this is your opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. Because by the time everyone's talking about Australian fintechs, You'll already know the names, the trends, and maybe even the tickers. You'll be that friend who called it early, the one who saw the next Klarna, the next Stripe, while others were still looking at the NASDAQ leaderboard. Let's not forget, the US fintech market is massive, but also mature. That means opportunities for exponential growth are harder to come by. Australia, on the other hand, is still ramping up. That curve is steep, and the acceleration is real. Getting in now is like investing in US fintech in 2013. The runway is long, and the liftoff has just begun. And it's not just about money, it's about ideas. Some of the most compelling fintech models are being tested in Australia first, like hybrid financial coaching apps, crypto debit integrations, and biometric security wallets. These aren't pipe dreams. They're live, they're working, and they're scaling. And eventually, they'll cross the Pacific. Australia is building not just companies, but ecosystems. From university incubators to government grants, from accelerator hubs in Melbourne to blockchain alliances in Brisbane, this country is setting the stage for fintech dominance. It's not a sprint, it's a well-planned marathon. And every smart player is lining up for a head start. You want to know what makes a fintech scene legit? It's when international banks start copying your models. That's happening right now with Australian RegTech, compliance automation tools so effective that EU and US firms are licensing them. That's clout, that's respect, and that's opportunity. We're not just talking about speculative investments here. We're talking about a country redefining financial inclusion, reshaping cross-border banking, and rethinking credit systems. Australia is doing what others are talking about, quietly, efficiently, and boldly. So don't sleep on this. Don't let another billion-dollar opportunity pass you by because it wasn't happening in your backyard. Look south, way south, and see what the future of fintech looks like. Look to a market that's innovating with purpose, scaling with speed, and welcoming global participation. You've heard of unicorns, but maybe it's time you met the kangaroo corns. If you found this eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more insights, and drop a comment below. Which Australian fintech do you think will hit a 10 billion valuation first? What trend excites you the most? Let's talk about it. I'll see you in the next one.